There is a particular kind of negotiation that happens in workplaces occasionally, where two departments are technically in a meeting together, technically discussing a resolution, and both sides have sent people, and there are documents on the table, and someone is taking minutes, and at some point you realize that neither side has any intention of actually agreeing to anything. They are simply performing the act of negotiation, because being seen to negotiate is, for the moment, more useful than either fighting or settling. I mention this not because I have strong views about corporate dysfunction, though I do, but because it describes with almost uncomfortable precision where the United States and Iran are right now. There is a ceasefire. Technically, there are talks. Technically. And both sides would like you to believe they are very close to a deal, which they have been saying, more or less continuously, for the better part of 2 months. So let us go back to where this started, because the origin of this particular mess tells you quite a lot about where it is going. On the 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran. They killed the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. They targeted the nuclear program, the ballistic missile infrastructure, and a significant portion of the military command. Iran responded the way you would expect a country to respond when someone has just killed its supreme leader. It closed the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil and 1/5 of global liquefied natural gas passes every single day. The International Energy Agency subsequently described what followed as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, which is quite a sentence. Oil went from around $60 a barrel in late January, before any of this was anticipated, to $91 on average by March, with analysts warning it could hit $150. Brent crude surged past $120. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on all its exports. Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE collectively lost around 10 million barrels a day of production capacity by mid-March. And gas prices across the United States, a country whose president had run on lowering the cost of living, hit $5 a gallon for regular, $6 for diesel. You have to admire the timing. Trump declared victory, set a deadline of unconditional surrender for Iran, then set another deadline, then another. And then, on the 8th of April, a 2-week ceasefire was agreed, mediated by Pakistan, which allowed limited shipping through the strait. The oil price dropped 15% in a day. Markets jumped. Commentators declared the crisis was resolving. And then it did not resolve, because the things that were supposed to happen in those 2 weeks, direct talks, a framework for nuclear concessions, a permanent arrangement for the strait, turned out to be rather more complicated than a 2-week deadline suggested. Now, as I record this, U.S. and Iranian negotiators have apparently reached a tentative 60-day memorandum of understanding to extend the ceasefire and begin nuclear talks. Trump has announced that a deal is largely negotiated and will be announced shortly. Iran's state media has reported that no agreement has been finalized. Iranian negotiator Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf posted on social media that his country was obtaining, and I am quoting directly here, concessions not through talks, but through missiles. Negotiations are only for making them understand those concessions. That is one of the more candid descriptions of a peace process I have encountered in some time. Meanwhile, Iran has now suspended talks entirely in protest of Israel's continuing operations in Lebanon, which Tehran says violate the ceasefire. Trump says talks are continuing at a rapid pace. The Iranian foreign minister says they are not. One of them is correct. The central practical problem here, beyond the nuclear program, beyond the sanctions, beyond the small matter of America having killed Iran's supreme leader, is the Strait of Hormuz and who gets to say what happens there. Trump has been clear, the strait is international waters. It will be open to everybody. Nobody is going to control it. He went further and suggested that Oman, which had been acting as a regional mediator and a longtime U.S. ally, should break its ties with Iran and stop any negotiation that might give Iran a role in managing the strait. He also suggested, in front of journalists, that if Oman did not comply, the U.S. would have to bomb them. They will understand, he added. They'll be fine. Oman has declined to break its ties with Iran. Iran, for its part, has proposed that instead of tolls, ships would be charged for the provision of services while transiting the strait. a distinction that would, of course, make absolutely no material difference to the cost for shipping companies, but would allow Iran to claim it was not technically charging tolls, which would be in breach of the UN law of the sea. Whether or not that particular piece of creative accounting satisfies anyone is an open question as I record this. What is not an open question is that Iran has made clear it regards management of the Strait as part of any final settlement, and the United States has made equally clear that it will not accept that. So the two sides have been sitting, not quite at an impasse, not quite in agreement, in that corporate meeting where everyone has sent someone and nobody is going to decide anything. Which brings us to this week, and the thing that made the Trump administration the least happy of all. The U.S. House of Representatives voted 215 to 208 to block Trump from continuing military action against Iran without congressional approval. 4 Republicans broke with their party: Tom Barrett of Michigan, Warren Davidson of Ohio, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, which is 4 more than had managed to vote this way in previous attempts. Representative Massie said after the vote, "People are tired of this. They're tired of $5 gas and $6 diesel and fertilizer we can't afford to put on our fields in Kentucky." That is not a foreign policy argument. That is a kitchen table argument, and kitchen table arguments have a way of getting through in a way that constitutional objections sometimes do not. Trump responded on social media. He wrote, and I will read this in full because it is worth appreciating. Yesterday, in a meaningless vote, the House voted 4 bad Republicans and all of the Democrats to limit my war powers right in the middle of my final negotiations to end the war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Who would do such an unpatriotic thing? They know where the negotiations stand. A few things are worth noting here. First, Trump spelled Democrats with a U, which is a stylistic choice he has made before, and which I do not think changes the substance of the argument, but is, shall we say, a distinctive touch. Second, his description of the vote as meaningless is technically accurate, in the sense that it would need to pass the Senate, and even then Trump would veto it, and overriding a veto would require 2/3 of both chambers, which is not happening. But the significance of the vote is not procedural, it is political. 4 Republicans in a slim majority voted against their president on a war he started without asking them. That is the story, not whether the resolution passes. There is one element of this situation that has received less attention than it deserves: the question of what the United States can actually do militarily at this point. The Wall Street Journal reported that Trump has told aides privately he will not resume major bombing unless U.S. troops are killed. The official position, of course, is that the U.S. has more weapons than ever and is fully capable of resuming operations at any time. This is, of course, the official position that governments always take after an intensive bombing campaign that has used very large numbers of very expensive weapons that are known to be slow and difficult to replace. The U.S. released approximately 58 million barrels of oil, around 14% of the strategic reserve, to try to contain domestic fuel prices. Operation Project Freedom, which was meant to escort commercial ships through the strait, was paused after 2 days following Iranian attacks on U.S. warships and pressure from Pakistan. These are not the operational signatures of a side that is winning comfortably and considering escalation. They are the signatures of a side that is trying to find a way to declare something that can be called a victory before the midterm elections, which are not very far away, and before the gas prices and the grocery bills create the kind of electoral problem that tariffs on their own had barely finished creating. It would be tempting to treat this as purely an American-Iranian story. It is not. Canada is watching this very carefully. Not because Canada has a direct stake in the Strait of Hormuz, though the energy price spike affects it alongside everyone else, but because this conflict is the latest and most dramatic data point in a much larger question that every country allied with or economically tied to the United States is now actively trying to answer. The question is simple. Is the United States a reliable partner, or is it a variable that needs to be managed? Canada bought military jets from Sweden. Mark Carney has been meeting with European leaders. The 4 countries that visited China for high-level talks in recent months were Canada, Britain, Germany, and Finland. None of that is coincidental. None of it is emotional. It is countries doing exactly what the data is telling them to do, reducing their exposure to a partner that has shown, repeatedly and now in the starkest possible terms, that it will make decisions of enormous consequence to everyone else without consulting anyone, and will then describe the results as victories. Trump launched this war, according to his aides, in part because he believed Iran would fold quickly. Iran has not folded. The ceasefire is fragile. The talks are stalled. Congress just told him no. The strategic reserve is 14% lighter. Gas is $5 a gallon. And the Iranian negotiator is publicly explaining that the concessions he is extracting are the result of missiles, not diplomacy. On the other side, of course, the president has stated on social media that a deal is largely negotiated and will be announced shortly, so that is something to look forward to. I am Marcus Fenn. This is Borderlines, analysis from the edge. This channel is at the very beginning of its journey, and if you think this kind of analysis is worth having, subscribing now means you are here from day one. The most important stories, as we are seeing in real time, rarely go the way anyone planned,